Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of 5 Facts. I'm Tony Southcott, and we're here to talk about Killer Klowns from Outer Space. This is an oddly chilling, terrifying slapstick nightmare from Stephen and Charles Chiodo. It's the type of movie that might be responsible for as many cases of phobias of clowns as John Wayne Gacy, as all these other things that have just made people terrified of clowns, because this one takes it to the nth degree. With their impressive and dynamic masks and mostly practical effects, the movie is very watchable today. Well, watchable if you like B-movies. The film itself is far more creative than the title would suggest. Not only does it feature clowns dissolving entire towns in cotton candy cocoons, but it also has a bitchin' 80s soundtrack. Without further ado, let's get down with the clowns. Fact number 1 on flying clowns and nightmares. Killer Klowns from Outer Space was inspired by a late-night discussion from the Chiodo brothers' greatest fears. After coming up with many scenarios, they concluded that a clown gliding through the night like it was driving an invisible car was the absolute scariest thing ever. The scene was added to the movie with the addition of some floating headlights. In this movie, there's a scene where one of the killer clowns runs a man off the road, sending him into a creek. Unfortunately for the effects staff, they forgot to remove the stoppers from under the car's wheels. Instead of having the car sail into a ditch at extreme speed, it was dragged to the edge and just kind of flopped down the hill. Fact number 2. Good costumes will get you far. In order to cut costs from the film, the Chiodo brothers used inexpensive materials to build their sets and costumes. Standard Christmas lights, plastic tubing everywhere, and entirely practical costumes allowed them to spend the money on the few post-production effects that they actually needed. If you look closely, levers are often dowel rods with kitty ball pit balls on them. The matte paintings are often employed to give bigger shots. Every costume in this movie was handmade by the crew and the Chiodo brothers. This was something that, if you look at these masks, they actually have a lot of animation to them. There's a lot of articulation. There's a lot of really cool stuff built into these. And with the plastics and the vinyls and everything else that they use to make them, they genuinely look alien. It's definitely suits and everything, but these are some of the more impressive costumes from the 80s, especially for clowns. Another thing they were able to get was Joe Viscasil, who ended up doing the explosion effects on Independence Day. He was able to do some of the work for this movie as well. Fact number 3. Never ask a clown to give you a hand. Curtis Mooney, the ultra-violent cop played by John Vernon, foreshadows his own death. When Mike and Officer Dave leave the police station to investigate the possible clown murders, Mooney shouts, "You'll never make a dummy out of me!" As fate would have it, one of the killer clowns turns the raging officer into a sort of ventriloquist dummy. It's not entirely clear if the clown had to move the spine and get in there, or if they just got a bunch of Vaseline. But the scene is quite effective. Fact number 4. This movie is cheesy by design. Killer Klowns from Outer Space is both an example of and a loving parody of B-movies. It closely follows the format of films like The Blob and several others. Teenagers making out spot a falling meteor, an old grizzled man and his dog investigate only to be eaten alive. Both films also have a young cop and a crotchety old cop that doesn't believe in what people are reporting. Fact number 5. The studio forced a happier ending. Fact number 5. The studio forced a happier ending. When the Chiodo brothers brought the original cut of Killer Klowns from Outer Space to their investors, they demanded the film to have a more upbeat ending. The original ending, Dave sacrifices himself to save Mike and Deb. After reshoots, Dave escapes with the Terenzi brothers in a clown car. It's a little bit of a Disney ending. We see that clown ship blow up in this fiery culmination of everything that's happened in the movie, and all of our protagonists remain unscathed. It's kind of a cop-out ending, and you can tell that they had to redo it over what they wanted to do. I'm always a sucker for self-sacrifice, so that kind of bugged me a little bit. Although I guess there is a darker side of it, if you think about it. There are a lot of townspeople still on that ship who aren't quite dead that are in cotton candy cocoons. So I suppose they did have a pretty high body count in this movie if you get down to it. Like I was saying earlier, Killer Klowns from Space is definitely a B-movie. This is not something that's going to be held in regard like Rosemary's Baby or any of these others that I constantly mention when I'm talking about B-movies. It's not The Room, though. This one is genuinely just a fun, well-made movie. Whether it's a rotund clown sucking the dissolved fluid of a person out of a cotton candy cocoon, or a balloon animal dog chasing down human prey, Killer Klowns from Outer Space is just a memorable gem of a film. It can't be said that it's great or that the acting is superb, but if you're looking for fun and not serious horror comedy that stands the test of time, then you could do far worse than this. This little glimpse into the 80s cinema is a well-constructed piece of world building. It also raises the bar on costume design. For children who saw it, left us all with a little bit of coulrophobia, the fear of clowns. We'll see if the long-awaited sequel, slated for 2017, can live up for the original. Considering this is the last week of 2017, I'm not going to think it's coming out. We'll see.